Hi, I'm Katie McClelland of De La Soul Yoga Studios, and this is a video tutorial on Lotus Position. So I want to emphasize that being able to sit in Lotus should not be something that you put too much value on. The reason why the yogis, the ancient yogis, are depicted in this position is because when you fold your legs up in such a manner, it positions the pelvis in a little bit of an anterior or forward tipping position. And this allows the spine to lift up and out of the pelvic bowl in an effortless, neutral fashion. So yoga, of course, comes from India, and the lifestyle there allows people to have more open hips. They do a lot more squatting than we do. Just their lifestyle in general makes this pose more of a beginner level pose, whereas you bring this pose to the Western yogi, and our lifestyle really tightens our hips up. So what happens is when people try to get into Padmasana, into Lotus Position, they can end up hurting their knees, because if your hips don't have the mobility and you're pulling your leg around, then the load is immediately transferred to the next available joint. In this case, it would be the knee, and then that's when we end up tweaking the knee. So just quickly, too, I want to just talk about the actual anatomical structure of these two joints. You know, your hip socket, the head of your femur in the socket, is a ball and socket joint. So it's meant to move in all different directions. If you think of like a can-can dancer, how they can fan kick their leg, they can kick high, they can kick back. So a lot of what we're trying to do in yoga is loosen up the tissue in the hip socket so that it can truly move as a ball and socket joint as it's meant to. The knee, on the other hand, is not a ball and socket joint. It's a hinge joint. So it can only extend and flex, extend and flex. It does not have any lateral movement available to it. You see when I move my knee from side to side, it's not actually the knee joint moving, it's the hip moving. So again, as we approach Lotus, we want to be really, really respectful of the knees. If we feel any whispers whatsoever in the knees, we come out of the pose and we just accept our limitations, and instead we would sit cross-legged, Sukhasana, easy seated pose, heel in front of heel, or perhaps up on a bolster or a block to help give the pelvis that position we're looking for so that the spine can be neutral for a seated meditation. If you're going to attempt Lotus, I would suggest cradling the right leg up, doing a little bit of rocking to just introduce some movement to that right hip. And I'm also trying to close off the angle of that knee joint. So I'm squeezing the calf into the hamstring. Now what I'm going to do, holding on to the ankle and the knee, is I move the entire structure of my leg around. So you see here, my thigh bone is actually almost parallel with my left thigh. So you don't want the knee going way out to the side. That's a common mistake people make. This foot, I've got the heel just to the inside of my left hip bone, and then the arch of my foot is trying to curve around the side of my waist. Okay? So these two things are really important. Heel to the inside of the hip, thigh bone almost parallel with the left thigh. This position is accessible for more flexible people. It's this next move that can really get you into trouble with this knee. So we want to be listening to that knee as we lift the ankle up and slide it on top. We want the movement coming from the hip and no sensation in the knee whatsoever. And now that I'm in the position, I'm actually trying to squeeze my thighs towards each other. Okay? So trying to bring my thigh bones as parallel with each other as possible. And I can either flex the feet, this keeps the ankles really safe and stable, or I can point the toes, option to take the hands around the back into a bind. This is how in Ashtanga yoga we finish the practice by binding and folding forward in reverence. And this bind is just a way of keeping all that prana, all that energy that we've created in the practice inside of our bodies. So this concludes our tutorial on Padmasana. Remember, it's a work in progress. Take your time with it. Namaste.